Hey, everybody. Welcome. Greetings from the maelstrom of contemporary capitalism. I'm really in my basement, but I'm also sitting in front of a dime store, a 99-cent store. This is the Andreas Gursky's famous photograph called 99 Cent, made in the year 1999, which is the year that Francis Fukuyama announced that history had ended because capitalism was going to proceed unchallenged forever in the future of human affairs. Also the year I graduated college. So 1999, Andreas Gursky, 99 Cent, the phantasmagoria of the commodity, the world of plenty and brightness and comfort that capitalism offers us. What Marx calls the lie of capitalist, the lie of the capitalist commodity. We are going to talk about the fetish of the commodity and its secret, the great first opening chapter of Capital Volume 1 by Karl Marx, the famous text. I'm going to share my screen with you guys so we can do a little bit of a PowerPoint. I'm going to try to talk you through a couple of the key ideas in this really, really crucial essay that we're going to treat as a work of philosophy. And we are going to, so we're not reading the Communist Manifesto, we're not reading the revolutionary writings, we're not reading any of his reporting on India and what he called the civil war in India, his anti-colonial writings. There's so much about Marx that we could be talking about, but we're going to treat Marx's writing on the commodity as a sort of species of the hermeneutic problem that we encountered with Freud and that we heard about with Sontag, where the surface level of phenomena is a kind of lie. And this is one of Marx's greatest insights about what he calls the bourgeois economic order, that is capitalism. It wasn't always this way. There were a whole sequence, as he explains in the long, long book, Capital Volume 1 and the many other volumes of Capital, that the vast system of capitalist production is merely one phase in the historical progression of social form, but it's the phase that we continue to live in now. So people have talked about the contemporary world as being late capitalism, information capitalism. There are all kinds of different names for our sort of hyper-contemporary moment. But for Karl Marx, writing during the Industrial Revolution, the period of sort of gathering ecological catastrophe and extraction in capitalist production in mid-19th century England, which is where he wrote Capital in the British Library in London, even though he was German. So this is about the sort of anatomy of the capitalist mode of production and the social form of the commodity, which he argues is at the whole center of bourgeois society. So that's what we live in now, he says, and the commodity is the secret to understanding it. So what is the commodity? Well, here's our photo. So now you really can see double version of the 99-cent store. We live in a world structured by goods that are available on an open market, and this stretches out, and stretches out, where each of these little commodities, each little pack of Skittles or cheap toilet brush or whatever you might buy at the 99-cent store, each of these commodities is a kind of cipher or code for vast worlds of human activity that are essentially allegorized, or they're sort of hidden by the thing that marches up to you. Can you see what this is? It's just my pen. It announces itself to you as a commodity, costs like whatever, $1.29. It's kind of a nice pen. But the thing that announces itself to you as a commodity that can be purchased for a price, in other words, an objective quantitative number, hides in it vast realms of qualitative experience that are hidden from us and ciphered and create massive networks of human activity that reach all over the world. So that know that the capitalist commodity is a kind of cipher for vast social worlds inhabited by people and marked also by resource extraction and all sorts of chains of commodities and supplies that are themselves convening vast numbers of actors together into an enormous network. So this little thing for Marx, the commodity, it congeals social relations, he said, and all of the social relations that convened in order to produce my little $1.29 pen are effectively hidden and ghosted inside of this thing. We're going to talk a little bit more about what that means, and we're going to do some of this work in class. Here's Marx. You've seen him before. Here's a JPEG I stole off the internet that explains the classic model of Marx's influence and why it's so hard to understand. It's the original interdisciplinary project. He is reading English political economy, in other words, the economists that invented this sort of ideological apparatus for explaining capitalism, 19th century English economists that took the capitalist mode of production as effectively natural, but they learned a lot about it, mechanisms of price, supply and demand, the whole movement of commodities and supply chains, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is the stuff, this bourgeois political economy is what you learn in today's econ departments, which maybe we'll talk about in class. But he joined the political economy with French socialism. In other words, these people that were living in communes and developing phalansteries, they were called, collective forms of social life in France that had revolutionary political commitments. So the political aspect is joined with the critique of English political economy. And he develops, and the way he's able to do that is using philosophy from Germany, Hegelian philosophy. And one of the key insights of Hegel's philosophy is to see nothing as a thing, to see only processes. Anything is just a frozen moment in a process. That's from the phenomenology of spirit. You don't have to remember that. What we do have to remember is that what Marx gets from German philosophy is a theory of temporality that comes to rest temporarily in things, but things are kind of illusions because only processes are happening all the time. And so Marx is interested in process. So I'm going to show you an equation right here. And for Marx, this is the sort of ultimately bizarre and metaphysical mystery that all of capitalist production rests on. And you'll remember it from Sontag and Derrida and other of our readers. It's the myth of the equation. What Marx says is that this is basically the law of exchange. The law of exchange says you can take any number of these things in different measurements or whatever, and you can trade them for something else. And the equal sign helps us see that these two things are somehow supposedly interchangeable with one another, that they're fungible. Capitalist exchange makes possible the idea of equivalence as a philosophical and practical possibility on Earth. And for Marx, this is like bordering on a kind of vast delusional structure. Coats and tea are not linen. They're not equivalent to one another. But the mystery and the magic, as he calls it, he uses all this metaphors of supernatural mysticism. He says this sort of mystery and religious weirdness of the equal sign is that it can have us believe that for 2 of these watches, you can buy 17 of these Hopkins books. That somehow we can figure out a way to make thing X equal to thing Y. And this is a philosophical leap Marx suggests to us, that it's crazy. It requires an explanation. How do we do it? This is the commodity essay. The commodity essay is going to explain to us the mystery behind this delusion of equivalence. So he says in the famous first sentence that you should all memorize and get tattoos of, a commodity appears at first sight an extremely obvious, trivial thing. But its analysis, looking closer at it, brings out that it is a very strange thing, abounding in metaphysical subtleties and theological niceties. So this first sentence of the commodity essay alerts us to what Marx is giving us in this vast theory of commodity culture and modern capitalism is also a theory of reading. The thing that greets your eye is actually not what it really is. The surface that you see is a kind of screen or mystification of all these subtleties and niceties, and in fact, really, really weird mechanisms that are concealed in the finished form of the commodity. So what is the mysterious character of the commodity form? Well, it consists, and this is going to take a second, so read this carefully. The mysterious character of the commodity form consists simply in the fact that the commodity reflects the social characteristics of men's own labor as though they are objective characteristics of the products of labor themselves, as the socio-natural properties of these things. What does that mean? The social characteristics of men's labor are reflected in the commodity as though they are aspects of the thing itself. I told you this pen costs $1.29. You think that that is a property of this pen, its price or its value, $1.29. Marx is telling us in this quotation that that supposedly objective characteristic of the product itself, how much does it cost, is actually a vast cipher of what he wants us to understand are social characteristics of men's labor, by which he means, who are the people who made this? What were their lives like? Did they have health insurance? Did they have childcare? Did they have enough to eat? Did they get to go home at night? Where do they sleep? Those are social characteristics of men's labor. Did they work in a factory? Did they work together? Did they work all a night shift? Were they working at home? You guys follow what I mean? That these social characteristics of men's labor get converted by some multiply mystical processes, and then you go to Office Depot, and what you see is a characteristic of the object itself. It's $1.29. Maybe you think that it's worth it to buy that one instead of this one, because this one's $1.32, or you like this one better, so you're willing to pay more for it, or whatever. But that decision that you're making at the moment of the commodity's appearance to you is a kind of cipher for vast, and ultimately Marx wants us to see qualitative, not quantitative, qualitative aspects of human experience that are encoded in the products of men's labor. So to read backwards from the form of appearance is to reveal to yourself all of the worlds that are concealed by these cheap-ass commodities, to show them for us in their qualitative, lived, and social character. That's the true story. The fake story is the one that presents itself to you in the 99-cent store. So this is what he means by the mystery of the commodity and the fetish character that enables us to worship the appearance of the thing and let the magic of that necromancy, as he calls it, work on us. Every time we go to the store and we engage in a process of forgetting, of not reading, that's the fetishism of the commodity. Its secret is that you can only have the equality between different kinds of labor, you working a jackhammer, me working in the 99-cent store, by the price or the wage. You have to abstract from the real inequality of the actual thing, and you have to get something, you have to reduce those things to what they have in common, that of being the expenditure of human labor power, or of human labor in the abstract. Have you heard of this term, a man hour? How many man hours does it take to do X or Y? You abstract into a fungible unit what's actually qualitative difference. This is, again, the magic of the equation. So I'm going to sort of stop us there. I want to stop us here on this idea that what we need to do is to read backwards from the commodity's form of appearance. The idea that the qualitative experience of human beings is hidden or encoded in an object like a commodity, and that the supposedly objective characteristic of the commodity, its price, how much does it cost, what is its value, is a kind of code or cipher, or as he wants us to see, a metaphysical conversion into fungibility of things that are ultimately incommensurable. So Marx is offering us here a theory of the qualitatively incommensurable human experiences that are formed into fungible little chits and units whose fungibility or exchangeability is reflected in the idea of price or exchange value. There's lots more to say about this. There's much, much more to say about use value and exchange value, and about qualitative and quantitative. All of those are terms that Marx is adapting from his various philosophical and economic sources. So we can go all the way into the weeds, but I want to leave you with the idea that the essay on the commodity is about the violence of abstraction and the injunction to read. We'll talk more tomorrow. I'm going to have you guys watch this video before we start class, and then we'll actually have a conversation. Goodbye from the 99 cent store.